Sorry on the beat.
What's going on, guys, and welcome to the channel once again. Today we're going to be talking about one of the most influential rappers of the late 2010s, someone I consider an icon and already a legend in the rap game, the one and only Young Thug, and we're going to be discussing his debut and game-changing mixtape, Barter 6. I got the deep analysis and review coming up today, so let's get into it real quick. As usual, we're going to get into a little bit of background for this tape, and as most of us already know, this tape dropped in April 2015 and pretty much ushered in a new era for rap. I'd say Young Thug, along with Migos, had the greatest influence of most artists that came out between 2014 to 2017, so he's most definitely already solidified in the rap game. The tape contained 13 tracks with features from Birdman, T.I., Boosie Badass, among others, with a total runtime of 51 minutes and 52 seconds. And with all that said, let's head into the analysis of the tape, starting with the word breakdown. Alright, so in terms of the word breakdown, we can see here that Thug delivers 7,991 words over the album, with 1,297 of those being unique, which accounts for about 16.2%. And to be honest, I've never really seen Thug as some type of word bank or vocabulary machine, so it's kind of expected. Most of his versatility is in his flows and melodies, as we'll see later on in the flow switches analysis. A good amount of Thug's words are actually ad-libs, and that's not really a surprise given that there's close to a 1-to-1 ratio of bars to ad-lib count. And with that said, let's look into the most used ad-libs on the album. So if you didn't know before, now it should be really evident that Yeah is by far Young Thug's most used ad-lib in general, and it greatly exceeds any other ad-lib used on this album, coming in with numbers almost 4 times as much as the second place ad-lib on Barter 6. So let's take a look at the actual numbers here, and like I said, Yeah comes in first place with 190 entries, A comes in at second place with 50, Woo with 49, What and Pew with 38 and 37 respectively, Skirt with 24, and the last 4 ad-libs come at 20, 20, 18, and 17. For this, I kind of like the distribution. I feel like Yeah has probably been the most used ad-lib for bigger artists in recent times, so that still feels right. For an ad-lib like Sheesh, the way Young Thug says it just makes it sound so good. I don't know what it is specifically, but it just fits in well, and I think it's one of his more defining ad-libs. Okay, let's go ahead and take a quick look at Young Thug's repetitions over Barter 6. Once I got these numbers, I was actually kind of surprised, and just as a clarification again, a repetition is based on 2 lines bearing 80% or more in word similarity, and each repeated line is only counted once. So as I was saying, I was surprised by how unrepetitive Young Thug actually is in general, and also in comparison to other rappers. The song with the most repetitions was Check with 6, while most of the other songs only had 1 repetition. We can see how Young Thug compares to someone like Lil Uzi by comparing their numbers, and there's a glaring difference. Thug has an average of about 1.8 repetitions per song, while Uzi on the other hand has about 5.4 repetitions per song. I feel like these low repetition numbers for Thug mostly are as a result of his bars being so random most times and the abundance of his flow switches in his songs, which we'll get into in a bit. Even his choruses don't really contain any repetitive material, and apart from Check, every song on the tape hovers between 3 or less repetitions. And now we can finally take a look at one of the factors that actually affect Thug's repetitions, his flow switches. On Barter 6, there are 144 total flow switches, which is legit quite amazing to me. It just shows how versatile Young Thug can be in his delivery. The album starts out with Constantly Hating, and on that track alone, there are 12 flow switches. It gets even more extreme with the song like Can't Tell, where Thug has 22 flow switches. And just as another note, these flow switches, as well as all the numbers on this album, are specific to Young Thug only and do not include his features. The numbers are strictly his. Almost every track has at least 10 flow switches, with the least coming in at 7, with songs like With That, Knocked Off, and Halftime. I think these flow switches are actually what make a lot of us Young Thug fans without even realizing it, and I think it's also one of the reasons why a lot of people have different favorite Young Thug songs. Like most times when he drops a song, people usually resonate with different tracks the most. And also in terms of song structure, sometimes there's just one particular flow he can use in a song that can make it an easy favorite. For example, in a song like Halftime, where Thug switches to that heavy auto-tune flow in the middle of the song and just makes those unclassifiable sounds, moments like that are what really define a song in my opinion, and Young Thug is one of the best at it. His flow switches are even apparent not only in his rapping but also in his singing or harmonizing on the track. And we can take a further look into how much time he spends doing both of those in the next section breakdown. Alright, in this section we're going to be taking a look at Young Thug's content delivery and how much time he spends rapping and singing. Now, taking the entirety of the album into account, we see that there's a pretty decent balance between rapping and singing, with the rapping accounting for approximately 51% and singing or harmonizing accounting for 49%. Now, in some songs, there's an apparent abundance of rapping, such as in songs like Check or Never Had It, and in others, there's an abundance of singing, like in Numbers or Constantly Hating. And personally, I'm quite indifferent about whether Thug is rapping or singing. I think he delivers quality regardless of what he's doing. Even if he's mumbling on a track, it still sounds good. We're going to be able to see a lot of difference in this rapping/singing scale once I get into the analysis of a Thug tape like Beautiful Thugger Girls, where there's a whole lot of harmonizing and singing even on the biggest songs on the tape. Okay, since all that's been discussed, let's take a look at what Young Thug actually raps or sings about in majority of his bars. And of course, that means we're going to take a look at Young Thug's topic breakdown for Barter 6, and what percentage of bars are devoted to a specific topic. Now, when it comes specifically to Young Thug, it is extremely hard to categorize his bars, and this is majorly due to the presence of bars like, I would rather be a coyote than be a coward, or another bar like, you got some Robins, little nigga, we got some Batmans, and a whole lot of other random stuff that generally don't make sense but still sound good. But regardless, some of his bars can still be categorized, and most of them actually fall into the money or possessions category, and as we can see here, 12.3% of his bars are within the scope. The other two prominent categories are sexual content and drug references, the later of which we will be taking a closer look into in just a bit. There do exist some bars that are strictly ad-libs, and that's not really uncommon with rappers these days, especially at the beginning of songs. Particularly to Young Thug though, there are times in the songs where he literally just pauses and yells out a couple of ad-libs before getting back to his regular bars. Okay, so as I said, drug references account for 6.2% of Young Thug's bars, but I decided to get a deeper look into his drug of choice, and to no surprise, it's lean. Thug stays with the double cup on him at all times, much like one of his bigger influences, Lil Wayne, whose double cup can almost be considered as literally part of him. Other drugs like Xanax and perks are mentioned, but not as frequently. And when I eventually get to an artist like Future, we'll be able to see how much Future actually talks about perks in comparison to other artists like Young Thug. And even though I don't have the numbers yet, I know it's going to be at least 10 times in every tape Future has dropped since 2015. And obviously, from a personal standpoint, I do not condone drug use, but as we can see from Thug's point of view, there's no holding back whatsoever. Before we wrap up with the analysis, I just wanted to discuss somewhat of a miscellaneous section, and it was something I picked up while re-listening to the album. There are a whole lot of celebrity and fictional character references on this tape. 34 different people mentioned in total, to be specific, with Randy Savage being mentioned the most, and some unexpected names such as Batman, Ed, and Eddie, and Beavis and Butthead coming up in the mix as well. Staple names that usually appear on Thug's tapes, such as Gucci Mane, Birdman, and so on, find their place on this tape to give us the usual feel of respect Thug often pays his predecessors and mentors. Now, these celebrity names are usually used in comparison. So, for example, something like Akon would be used in a line such as Diamonds as Black as Akon, or somebody like Katy Perry or Miley Cyrus would be used in comparison to drug references such as White like Katy Perry or White like Miley Cyrus. So that's how a rapper like Young Thug would probably throw in these celebrity names into the mix. With all that being said and done, we finally get to conclude with my overall review for this tape. And obviously, I'm going to give this tape a fat 10 out of 10 with no debate whatsoever. This tape is 100% a classic in my opinion, mostly in terms of how it almost sounds better on every listen. And even though it came out in 2015, I think my favorite song on this tape still changes at least once a year. At first listen, there were even a couple of songs that I didn't even like at all, but as it is with several Young Thug songs, they just grow on you whether you like it or not. The crazy thing is this album only sold 17,000 copies first week, but trust me, if it were to drop in 2020, it would do at least 100K guaranteed off streams alone. Another thing is with this tape, I feel like it started to define a clear career path for Young Thug in terms of direction, because if you look at his previous tapes, even though they weren't official, he didn't really have an established sound, and he still kind of sounded like Lil Wayne earlier in his career. But with this tape, it sort of defined him in terms of his music style as well as his beat selection mostly. And I personally think Young Thug did a good job of following this tape up with what I consider experimentations, but not straying too far away from a sound that he already established. So it was a good way to actually keep pushing the boundaries in terms of his sound, while also giving fans the content that they're already used to. And that's all I have for you today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm gonna have a whole lot more content for you coming up real soon. Make sure you subscribe, and also be sure to leave any comment on what other stats you'd like to see, as well as any other albums you'd want me to do. Thank you so much for watching.